What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly. Week number 2, after a crazy week 1, is in the books. It is time to look ahead as we get ready to really get into the meat of the season. Obviously, really early, but always opportunities here on the network to break it all down. With me is, of course, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. Mr. Martinez, how you doing tonight, sir?
The Raiders leading the AFC West. There, I might as well say it this week because I don't know how many more weeks I'll be able to say it. Doing great. It's Wednesday. We're talking football. No more waking up and wondering if it's true. It is football season.
Amen. And you know what? I'll piggyback on top of that. The Philadelphia Eagles are in first place of the NFC East. Look at that. And you know what? Coach isn't with us here tonight, but he would tell you that the New Orleans Saints are at the top of the NFC South as well. So yeah, it's wins all around here for the podcast. But of course it is week 1. And I forget which coach that said it. It might not have been a coach, but somebody said, you know, the biggest overreaction is after week 1 of the NFL season. And that's really the biggest thing. I know for myself, there were a lot of surprises. Underdogs go 12-4, the best week 1 they've ever had. There were a lot of surprises, a lot of things that, you know, a lot of people didn't see coming. And I know for myself, at the top of that list has to be the performance of Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. That was pretty atrocious from them. And if they didn't have the offseason, or at least if Aaron Rodgers didn't have the offseason, he did, I don't think it would be that big of a story. I mean, look, when you're one of the best quarterbacks in the league and you have really, I mean, statistically, you could have spiked the ball on every single pass attempt and had a better quarterback rating than what he actually did. I mean, it's pretty crazy. He was on my fantasy team, got me 1.3 points. Absolutely out of control. Yeah. And any other quarterback of his caliber, I think you could say, look, it's one game, blah, blah, blah. But if the offseason he's had, you have to ask the question, does he give a crap? You know, is he in it for the right reasons? Which is kind of crazy. But for myself, that was definitely one of the biggest surprises. Raider Jim, any surprises, anything that jumped out to you week 1?
I did not think Houston was going to come out and play the way they did. Houston was a big shocker for me. I wasn't that surprised by the Pittsburgh game. I thought they were going to come out and do some work, and they did some work. So I think my big ones are, you know, Tennessee doing what they did. That was a disappointment. Houston for me was a disappointment. Other than that, no, I don't think there was anything too well. And again, you already touched on it, the Green Bay game. Those would be the big 3 for me. Yeah, I was fortunate. Over unders, I was 7 for 14 with 2 pushes, and on the spread picks, I was 10 for 16. So, hey, I'm going to take that for a week 1 when you really don't know what's out there. You don't have anything to go on. So, yeah, I was happy with that.
Yeah, it's a tough week 1. The NFL, there's no turnover quite like the NFL when it comes to roster overhauls and really guys that come out of nowhere. There are going to be plenty more that roll through, but as always, we're going to start week 2 looking at the Thursday night game. It is an NFC East battle between 2 teams that, of course, lost week 1. It is the New York Giants heading to Landover, Maryland to take on the Washington football team. I'll start this one off, obviously, in my jurisdiction. Myself, personally, I was a little... Now, obviously, the biggest injury of week 1, or at least on maybe the offensive side of the ball, might be Ryan Fitzpatrick. He will be out 6 to 8 weeks. It's a hip injury. Yeah. So Taylor Heineke steps up. Now, the Cam Newton situation it must be done and dusted because if they didn't bring him in earlier, I don't think they're going to bring him in now. So it's Taylor Heineke. I thought he looked okay when he came in. I do think the Charger defense is better than the Giants defense, but this Giants defense is going to give you fits as well. The Giants Washington is 3-point favorites. The over-under is 41. Couple little nuggets here. The Giants, as road underdogs since 2018, against the spread, they've been 16-4. And in the Giants' last 17 games, the under has hit 13 of those 17 times. So something to think about there. Now, 41 is probably one of the lowest numbers. It is the lowest number you're going to see this weekend. Probably some of the lowest numbers you'll see all season. So I'm not going to touch that one. However, I do like the Giants here. I think the NFC East, you're going to see a lot of infighting, a lot of teams beating up on each other. And this is a situation, I think, where the football team kind of try and figure out what type of offense they want. I know they want to run the ball first and foremost. That's their goal, number one. However, when they get into a situation, when they go down 10-0, and it might not necessarily be this week, but at some point they're going to go down 10-0, 14-3, something like that. And they're going to have to open the offense up. They're going to have to figure out how they're going to do that for the next 6 to 8 weeks with Heineke. There might be some growing pains this week. I think the Giants on a short week, it kind of levels the playing field, I think, for a lot of teams. So I like the Giants here. I'll buy a half point just to get over that 3 points, but I really do like the Giants plus 3.5 here, just to kind of, I see it as a field goal game either way, but Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm buying the point the other direction. I'm going to take Washington minus 2.5 because I think at home, as you said, the Giants aren't the Chargers. Chargers are a decent team. No bones about it. New York Giants, oh my gosh, once again, Saquon Barkley, they don't know to what level he's going to be able to play. They've got Evan Ingram's out possibly, or he's at least going to be slowed down because he's got a calf muscle, bad calf. So they need help on the offense, the Giants do. And until they can get out there and prove it, then the Washington defense is not that great. But, I don't see the Giants, as you even mentioned it, they want to run the ball. They don't want to pass the ball. They would, if they could find success at passing, they could probably do some damage against Washington. But I think Washington, given the injury, to Fitzpatrick, I think they are going to have a different mindset. Again, I'm going to keep going back until proven otherwise that Coach Rivera is going to be able to rally the troops and tell them, okay, we're at home again. Let's put last week behind us and let's move forward. So I'm going to take the Washington team in this one.
Nice, yeah.
And quite honestly, for a Thursday night game, on one hand, you go from the Raiders-Ravens on Monday night to the Giants and the Washington team on Thursday night. Who wrote the schedule? I mean, what were you thinking?
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it's, because I think everyone has to play a Thursday game. So yeah. I think they try and just get that one out of the way with these two teams. You definitely, I think if you look at the Thursday night games towards the end of the year, that's when you're kind of, because you can't flex these games, obviously. So yeah, this is going to be a bit of a stinker probably. If you got some, a date to do or something like that, this is probably a Thursday night game you can sacrifice. You're probably not going to miss out on great football. It might be exciting, but because even that Ravens Raiders craziness, as exciting as it was, I wouldn't call it, textbook great football. There was a lot of mistakes.
Oh no, calamity all the way around.
Calamity. Yeah, but it ended the way it needed to. And I think that could be it here. Kind of a fumbling, bumbling situation. It's going to be an interesting one, and definitely one that could shape at least one team. I think Washington's chances later on in the year for a possible playoff spot. But moving on, we got the New Orleans Saints heading to Carolina. The Saints are 3.5 point favorites. The over under here is 44. Raider Jim, I'll let you lead the way here on this one.
Yeah, my question, I didn't have time to dig too deep before we went on this evening. I don't know what the status is of all the New Orleans people who got hit with COVID. Are you aware?
No, it's been, I don't know if it's, actually, I'm pretty sure I know it's calculated, but it's definitely not the news that it was making last year when this happened.
Right.
It was everywhere. It was every sporting app you had something about it. Not so much this year. Once again, I believe it's a calculated effort by the NFL to kind of settle things down. They don't want that kind of, I guess, backlash or whatever you want to call it. But it's definitely not nearly as prevalent in terms of gaining that information, daily updates, if you will. But I have not seen too much. I mean, to be honest, you were Coach Lupian were the first person to kind of bring it up a few days ago. Yeah. And that was kind of the first time I saw it, which is, kind of odd. It didn't happen like that last year. So it seems a little odd. I'm going to look it up right now while you're running through things.
Yeah. And aside from that, they've got their fair share of players who got dinged up over the weekend. They've got Tano Pisagnan is out, nursing a calf. Marshawn Lattimore hurt his hand. He should be able to still play. Eric McCoy has a strained calf. I mean, it's small things like that for the Saints. Are they going to have trouble with Carolina? I don't think so. Carolina was another surprise for me over the weekend. They did not perform to the level I thought they would come out and perform. But nonetheless, I think on the road, I will take the Saints. I'll take the 3.5. Over under at 44. They should go well over 44 in this one.
Yeah, and just following up on that, it does look so no names were released in terms of that, but it is a group of offensive coaches along with the team's nutritionist and only one player. Now, obviously, the coaching side of things, that does complicate it, no doubt about that. But in terms of playing side of things, no, it's not Jameis, it's not, the big guys, right, at least that are going to play. So I agree. I really like the Saints here. I know, Sam Darnold looked good against the Jets, but I expected that. I think that's, Darnold's probably going to have 3 or 4 good games a year. And that was probably going to be one of them for multitude of reasons, mainly because the Jets just aren't very good. The Saints are, and Jameis Winston may stutter down the line, but I don't think it's here. 3.5 on the road it's probably going to be 50-50 in that stadium. There's a lot of Saints fans in the South, so it's not a crazy home field advantage. I agree. I didn't hear the spread part of it, but I'm definitely on with you. The over 44. I think that's one you can feel good about. The only concern I have there is how many points can Carolina score? Because this could get out of hand and kind of be a 31-10. And you go, damn, the Saints did their part, right, but the Panthers didn't to get me the over there. But I think that's the only way it stays under. And then, of course, like I said, I think the Saints minus 3.5. That's a pretty safe bet there. So,
yes.
Moving on to the other game in the NFC South, as it's all NFC South weekend. Atlanta heads to Tampa, and obviously Atlanta had a rough weekend last year. Last week I should say, Tampa Bay got a great win on Thursday night. Tom Brady doing what he does, and plus they get the extra. They call it mini bye week. You get 10 days. So all signs looking towards Tampa, as the betting line does as well. The Vegas Insider Consensus has it Tampa Bay minus 13, the over under 52. Now, a couple betting notes here. Since 2018, all of these games have gone over the number. Arians is 0-4 against the spread as a double-digit favorite in his career. However, Brady against Matt Ryan in the last 6 meetings, Brady is 5-1 against the spread. 13 points is a lot of points here, but this is a Atlanta Falcons team that if the Eagles defense gave you trouble in that front line, and the Eagles defense is probably above average, there's no doubt about it, but they are not nearly on the level that Tampa Bay is on. I think Tampa Bay is going to handle their business. It is a divisional game. Those divisional opponents always seem to kind of come out, but it's early season. I don't think the Falcons even have their feet underneath them to kind of mount a challenge at this point. I'm not going to bet this game because 13 points is just a ton of points, because anything can happen. A fourth quarter going into the fourth quarter and Tampa Bay's up 24 points. Tampa may give up, 2 touchdowns just and go, oh, well, darn, we still won. We won by 10, blah, blah, blah. And then guess what? You got a backdoor cover. So I'm not touching that. In terms of the over under, I'd probably lean towards the underside of things, and that's only because of the Atlanta offense. I think Atlanta's offense is going to struggle mightily unless we get into a garbage time situation. But even then, I think Tampa Bay's backups are still going to be able to keep those guys under control. This is a tough one. The line is so big, and I really can't sit here and talk plus 13 Atlanta either. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on probably the biggest mismatch of the weekend?
Is Atlanta really that much worse than the Dallas Cowboys? That's what I want to know. Because think about it, that Dallas covered last week. Dallas covered, and that was a big spread. That was 9.5. 8,
yeah, I think it
finally around there, because I gave my buddy Frank, I said take the Cowboys to cover at +9, and sure enough, they got it, and they got the over. I think the game goes over 52. I can see Atlanta scoring, but I see Tampa Bay scoring 5 touchdowns. So in that case, you just need a field goal and a couple touchdowns on the other side of the ball. But I'm very intrigued, and I'll watch the line on this one, because wow, that I gotta believe it could be one of those games where they come out and it's like, okay, yeah, you're gonna beat us, but you're gonna have to work to beat us. And Atlanta has a decent game. And I don't know what the weather is, because isn't there another storm making its way to the Tampa area right now? And I don't know how bad that is and what the weather might be. I'll look that up as we're moving on to the next one. But I'm with you at this point. I'm staying away from the spread, but I'll definitely take the over on that one.
Yeah, it's gonna be kind of, I would say, ugly, even if the weather isn't the ugly side of things. I hope that the Atlanta Falcons are pretty much on par with the Dallas Cowboys, because that would mean great things for the Eagles, because they obviously handled their business. I just feel like, if that defense can do to the Falcons what they did, it's going to be tough sledding against a really talented and well-coached Tampa Bay team plus 4 days. And that's, I think, one of the other things as well. But it is a question of 13 points in the NFL. That's a huge, huge number. So
88 degrees at game time with 58% chance of scattered thunder showers.
Yeah.
So that might impact what your over-under is going to be too, depending on how wet that field gets.
And it might be a situation where this game starts at 10 a.m. West Coast time and finishes up 5 o'clock, because they have a 2.5 hour thunder delay or weather delay, because we've seen that usually once early on. I mean, it's not too much of a coincidence that usually early on in the season the Southern teams have to deal with some sort of hurricane situation. Now, unfortunately, it seems like when it comes to relocation, it only seems like the Saints who have been hit with that, but that's for a Weather Channel podcast, not this one. But moving on, as we move into the AFC West, it's Kansas City at Baltimore. Kansas City is a 3.5 point favorite. The over under here is 56. Some betting notes here. Baltimore is 9-1 as a dog since 2018. That is against the spread. And then Kansas City is 2-10 against the spread in their last 12 games, including the playoffs. But of course, this is the AFC West. So Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors first up.
Yeah, this is going to be a good game. And I'm kind of, 3.5 isn't bad, but 3.5 coming in as the road favorite. What's Jackson going to do on, because he was pretty upset by the time he walked off the field in Las Vegas. And the difference being they had trouble with Derek Carr. They're probably going to have trouble with Patrick Mahomes, because who doesn't? I might take Baltimore +4, get an extra half point, because they might keep it close. Hard to say. Over under on 56, I think definitely they will hit that. I don't see a problem with that one. I'm looking for the injuries here. Really, there's nobody at all. Tyreek Hill had listed as a toe injury, but he should be able to play on Sunday. Baltimore, nothing has been released for Baltimore on the injury side of things. So with that said, I will probably at least for the time being, keep an eye or keep it in under my hat that I'm going to probably bet Ravens minus or +4. See if they have any news coming out though on the injury line between now and then.
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest things for Baltimore is who's going to reliably run the ball, because this is a team that's not built for Lamar Jackson to throw the ball 40 plus times a game, even probably 30. And, in a world now of the NFL where they believe, most general managers, front offices believe NFL running backs are a dime a dozen. You can plug and play, blah, blah, blah. How's that going to work? Because there were situations against the Raiders that they had opportunities to kind of put the game away, or at least make things, not as kind of dicey towards the end. And they were not able to do that on Monday night. And a lot of that was because of the injury situation. I mean, last Thursday, probably a coach's nightmare. It was, I believe, Marcus Peters and was it Edwards or one of the other running backs? I mean, that made 4 players before the season started out for the season, to the point where Harbaugh just said, done. We're everyone off the field. We'll do walkthroughs on Saturday, but we can't do this. We can't afford to do this anymore. And it's tough. And to double down on that, here come the defending, 2-time defending AFC champs, that while, technically it's an East Coast road trip, Kansas City is not by any stretch on the West Coast. So I don't think that will matter too much. For me, though, I am worried about how Kansas City kind of started last week. Kansas City, it took them a little while to kind of get rolling. They might not have that opportunity against Baltimore. If Baltimore gets rolling on offense and they figure things out, because Lamar Jackson, I mean, I know Raider Jim can attest to this. There were plenty of times where you thought, okay, he's down, and boom, he's either scrambling or he's making a play, even if it's just throwing it away. And so he can still do that. And obviously Patrick Mahomes can do that as well. Myself, I don't think I'm going to probably bet spread wise. Maybe not even over under. Now 56, the highest number of the weekend. That's a pretty high number in itself. However, both of these offenses can put up points in a blink of an eye. So this is a game, as an NFL fan, I kind of sit back and watch and enjoy, maybe a live bet here or there, but those lines right now. And I'm kind of with you too. Who's going to run the rock? Who's going to be healthy? Come, I believe 125, at least on the West Coast on Sunday. Who's going to get it done? That'll probably be a situation for that day to figure out. But moving on, of course, to the second game in the AFC West. It is the Las Vegas Raiders at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh is a 5.5-point favorite. The over-under here is 47, according to Vegas Insider's consensus. Some betting numbers here, which is kind of interesting to me. Something's got to give here. Las Vegas, they are 0-3 against the spread in their last 3 road games, while Pittsburgh is 0-3 against the spread in their last 3 as home favorites. And since last year, the Raiders have the highest over percentage. 14 of their last 17 games have gone over. Now, Raider Jim has talked a lot about that defense, and that's a big reason why. But Raider Jim, this is obviously your jurisdiction. What do you got? 2 oldest franchises in football, the Raiders and the Steelers.
Yeah, every time they play back there, I still see Franco Harris picking up a football off the top of his cleats and running, 40, 50, 60 yards, whatever it was. But I digress. Raiders are pretty banged up after Monday night. They lost Denzel Good. He's out for the season. They are not sure if Ngakoue can play this week. If he can, it's going to be limited. One of the ones that really worries me is Marcus Mariota's quad. If he is not 100% and they need to bring him in, when they brought him in early in the game and he did that one, they brought him in, it was kind of got everybody's attention on the wide receivers, what's going to happen, and he takes off running. That's the kind of thing they need to be able to pull out if they can. And they may not have that this week. Carl Nassib, who was having a great game helping out Mad Max, he may not be able to play because apparently he's got a bruised or a torn pectoral muscle plus a toe. So, and Incognito is Richie Incognito. So unfortunately, he hasn't been practicing and he probably will not play on Sunday either. That said, What are they going to do? I think the Raiders got a good shot in the arm, and it was a good mental game for them, if nothing else. They're going to be riding high going into Pittsburgh. Although Pittsburgh, again, we all know they had a pretty decent game over the weekend too. At home, 5.5. I will take. I'd take an extra half point, and I'll take the Raiders +6 in that contest. And that's what I did with them on Monday night. Was I said, yeah, I agree, they're at home, but they should be the underdog. But they'll cover 4.5 or 5, and they did. And on the over/under 47. I think just by virtue of them running more of the West Coast offense again, like they did last week, 47 is very achievable. So I would go over on it, and I would take the Raiders +6.
Yeah, this is another one. I am all on the Raiders here. I was, kind of like talked about earlier, David Carr's game as a whole, you're not going to put it in the Hall of Fame and frame it and, his box score. That's not the case. I was very, very impressed with the way he picked himself up. Obviously, you even brought it up. It's easy, I think, to kind of fall in love with a guy like Darren Waller, to just be like, all I have to do is throw it, at the 7'2" mark. And more than likely, it's not going to, worst case scenario, it falls, in most situations. Now, you do have to kind of bring yourself down. Hey, you know what? Check it down. Find other ways to get the ball. And once he did that, I was very impressed with that last drive. 30 seconds to go, no timeouts. Now, look, if you're a defensive guy, you can jump all over the Ravens for allowing that to happen. That's fine. However, for the point I'm trying to make, that last throw Derek Carr made was an absolute rocket. He knew he had to get it in there. He knew it had to be very quick. I mean, you're not just ripping it in there because you're trying to beat coverage. You're ripping it in there to save any millisecond you can for what comes next, which was, of course, the game-tying field goal by Carlson. The Raiders are a team for me that if they were able to kind of keep Lamar Jackson somewhat under control, and even the Gerald McCoy injury, that's going to hurt. Seemed like the defense definitely took some knocks, but if they can keep that under control, I liked what Gus Bradley kind of threw at them. There were a lot of former Chargers, a lot more than I expected. Denzel Perryman, there's Casey Hayward in there, but at the same time, it's the familiarity factor of the Gus Bradley system. Gus Bradley's system has its knocks, but you know what? It's also been a Super Bowl winning system back in Seattle. Now, take your tape player out. I know, going back in time, but still. So I do like the Raiders here, but I also like the over. I think the Steeler defense is a bit overrated, and I'm not totally sold on what the Raiders can do if this game really does start to get kind of into an open wheel, Roethlisberger versus Carr, because I think Carr can throw the ball with pretty much any team out there. It's just what he does with those, I guess we'll call them incompletions, because, he's going to miss on some, but how does he miss? Unfortunately, sometimes his misses end up going the other way, and that's unfortunately not going to happen. But I really do like the over 47 in this one. So
on the Monday night game, at one point, when I was getting upset on my sofa, because it's like, I get it, Waller's the best target you got out there. And they were doing a number on Hunter Renfrow, so he couldn't get open, but there were other targets. But it didn't matter because he continued to throw it in the direction of Waller. And at one point, when the game started to turn just a little bit before halftime and even after halftime, one of the announcers made a great observation. He says, you know what that is? You know why they did that? He says, that's Derek Carr telling Gruden from his helmet, no, that's not the play we're going to run. I'm running this play. He said, and that's why he's starting to execute, because he's calling the plays. He's shaking off Gruden. He's like, we're not getting anywhere with your game plan, so we're going to do it this way. And I think there might have been a little validity to those remarks by the announcer. Good. And then my other concern is, the only other concern I have with the game on Sunday, what really stood out for me on the Monday night game was Raiders do not have a running game. And that's, again, you've heard me say it before, you can't have a one-dimensional offense. You've got to have multiple weapons. And if you don't, and Josh Jacobs is not, he was dinged up on Monday and not productive. he's already listed as hurt and questionable for Sunday. So you either, take him out of the equation and put somebody else in there and say, all right, here's your shot, and see what they can do.
Yeah, and the Steelers are definitely a team that you need to keep that pass rush honest. You can't allow them to just tee off and just say, hey, let's meet at the quarterback. And if they run a draw, then they run a draw. But that's something that has to be figured out. But moving on to the third game in the AFC West, it is Denver heading to Jacksonville currently, or as of yesterday, I should say, when I was putting this together, Vegas Insider consensus had Denver -6. The over-under being 45.5. Very interesting here. The line actually opened, I believe, Sunday night, Monday morning at Denver, -2.5. So that line has skyrocketed. Denver last year was the only team in the NFL to be an underdog. Ironically, this will make it their second week in a row that they are a favorite. So they're 2 for 2 already this year being favorites, obviously covered last week. Or actually, I don't know if they covered, but I know they won. I don't quite remember that score. But anyways, and then one other thing, Teddy Bridgewater, he is 4-1 in his career against the spread as a road favorite. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Denver -6 at Jacksonville.
Well, I said it 3 weeks ago, Denver's going to be more competitive than people think. It may not be pretty all the time. They may not run over opponents, but they are going to be competitive. On the road against Jacksonville, after what I saw with Jacksonville last week, I go with the 6, maybe take it down a half point, 5.5, just to be safe. 45.5, though, is kind of an interesting over-under. I don't know that it's going to, there definitely will not be a shootout, and I can see this ending up 28-17. So there you are, stuck at 45. I can see it being 24-20. There you are, stuck at 44. So I'd really be careful on the over-under on this one. You might be better off by a half a point and take under 46 on this one. But yeah, it's not going to be an offensive showcase. It's going to be a football game.
Yeah. Well, it's two teams that are at the very least either finding their rhythm offensively, or it's not their strength, at least on in Denver's situation. I mean, they did what they need to do against the Giants, but Denver's not going to be the reason, at least their offense won't be the reason too many games go over. This is a situation with Jacksonville. Look, I didn't expect the Urban Meyer experiment to go terribly well. However, I did not expect him to come into week one and have his rookie quarterback throw the ball 51 times. I mean, come on, Urban. You have to figure out a way to balance the attack. And I know you went down early, and I understand that. Luckily, Trevor, I mean, I got to give some credit to that Jacksonville offensive line. Now, they probably have their lumps, but they only allowed 1 sack on 52 dropbacks. You know, he was probably hit and knocked down. I understand that. But, you know, when you usually see first overall picks, a big reason why you don't throw the ball a whole lot is because those dropbacks are probably behind a pretty bad offensive line. So, you know, somewhat kudos there. Now, Urban Meyer, I think, I don't know. I would bet that it's his ego that just decided, hey, you know what? I can bring my playbook from college and do this in the NFL. And he's realizing, hey, guess what? Not even that's going to work. Not even if you have a top 10 speed quarterback or anything like that. Trevor Lawrence may get there, but if he's going to have to drop back 52 times a game early on, it's not going to happen. However, I do think there's going to be enough kind of return to the mean, I guess, here. I think Jacksonville's a pretty bad team, no doubt about it. But Denver, for me, I think on the road, I don't know if 6-point favorites on the road or anything I'd like to go with. I actually have Jacksonville +6, just because, once again, I think there is a bit of, and once again, Jacksonville, not a home field advantage, but it is at least some familiarity for them. They'll be able, what is the field looking like? I mean, this is probably the 4th straight week in a row that an NFL game's been played there after last week, the Saints played there. So maybe not the biggest, it's still early, but that could be something. I don't know. I don't think Denver is 6-point favorite on the road to anybody. And I do at least have enough faith in Urban Meyer for him to kind of go, okay, look, this didn't work. We're not going to maybe, blow the doors off of things, but we're not going to force my quarterback to drop back 52 times. So I think it's a little closer. I think it's more of a field goal game. So I do like Jacksonville here, but we'll see how it goes.
If you're on the other side, if you're on the Denver defensive side and you watch that game film and you see what Urban Meyer tried to pull off the other day, do you not just start immediately developing a scheme where you just are sending extra heat on that guy? You're sending guys off the edge. You're making that guy, you're forcing him out of the pocket so fast, it's not funny. So Urban Meyer needs to be careful. There was a young man on the radio made a remark, which I thought was pretty funny. And he said, I give it to week 14 or so, and pretty soon we're going to start hearing about Urban Meyer taking a leave of absence due to health reasons, because it's just going to implode on him over there.
Yep, and then end up at USC this time next year. But anyways, that's a whole nother story, as I'm wearing a USC shirt. But anyways, he's definitely getting a little frustrated in the off week having to answer questions about USC. He's definitely getting a little perturbed, but that's what happens in the NFL. When you're not successful, things happen and questions are asked. Now, personally, my favorite betting game of the weekend, it's this one. It's Dallas at the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are 3-point favorites. A 55 is the over-under. Some betting numbers here. The Chargers are 5-14-1 against the spread as home favorites since 2018. And Dak Prescott 14-8-1 against the spread as a road underdog in his career. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Dallas heading to SoFi Stadium for the Chargers home opener.
The Chargers look pretty darn good, but they look pretty darn good against the Washington football team. Dallas, they're this much better maybe than Washington. They're not a whole lot better than Washington. But I just don't know what they're going to do against the Charger defense. The Charger defense is pretty darn good, and they brought some heat last week. So I see them duplicating the defensive effort. I think they'll be fairly successful on against Dallas on the offensive side of the ball. And I think I would just go straight across with everything on this one, the spread and the over-under. I would go over on this one. I think it's going to be a pretty decent game. I can see it going 35-28, I can see it easily going over 55.
Gotcha. I'm actually on the other side on this one. And kind of somewhat of a big reason is I think nightmare scenario for the Chargers is home opener against a Raiders, a Cowboys, a Steelers, a Patriot, a big traveling. That's going to be, and it's going to set the tone all year. And I'll keep banging this drum, and the hill that I die on may be this one as well, but they will have no home openers or home games. There might be one or two where it's 50-50. This will be as close as they'll get against a team like the Cowboys, but it'll still be predominantly Cowboy fans. It's going to get to the point where late in the game, you might see Herbert having to run the silent count, something he hasn't had to do since probably college. And I will say there were a lot of Charger fans, a lot more Charger fans than I remember seeing, at least in Washington. But Washington, that franchise, kind of a bit in turmoil. There are a lot of fans of the former mascot that are boycotting either going to the games or even following them. So that's different. But the Cowboys, for better or worse, that is a bandwagon team. Everybody around the country, there's a smidgen of Cowboy fans everywhere. But another part of this too, I was really impressed with what I saw out of Dallas. I know that, they have their issues on defense, no doubt about it, but Dak looks like he's ready to roll right away. There were no real growing pains. There were no, kind of him pulling back on the reins a bit. I was very impressed with what he was able to do. Of course, look, they left too much time on the clock against Tom Brady. There are plenty of teams in the NFL who can kind of chalk that one up to why it didn't work. But for the Cowboys, I think they embrace this as a home game on the road. I think they get the job done. Plus 3.5. I will at least buy a half point just in case. 55 points here. I think we're going to see a couple turnovers on both sides of the ball. That's going to keep that under this. I've actually locked both of these in. I think it's just going to be a really interesting game that sets the tone for both of these teams going forward. I could be completely wrong about the Cowboys, and this is another year for the Cowboys where they sputter to 6-10 or 6-11, whatever it comes out to. I unfortunately, as an Eagle fan, I hate to say it, but I don't think that's the case. And conversely, for the Chargers, this could be a year that they actually say, look, we're going to go 11-7 or, whatever that goes. And we're going to at least be second place in our division and actually have a shot wild card weekend of maybe knocking someone off. So this is going to be a tone setter, I think, for both of these teams. But I do think Dallas can get the job done just because of the fact that just everything I've ever seen with the Chargers and that franchise is they don't generally put two good games together too often. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on to the next game, it is the San Francisco 49ers heading to the 1-0 NFC East leading Philadelphia Eagles. The San Francisco 49ers are 4-point favorites here, and the over-under is 50. Those lines are according to Vegas Insider's consensus. Now, obviously, as a diehard Eagle fan myself, and I think for all Eagle fans who are at least, somewhat coherent and not absolutely rabid out of their mind, you have to kind of pump the brakes. It was probably the most fun I've had on a Sunday since Super Bowl, whatever, when it was Nick Foles holding up the Super Bowl. That was probably the last time the Eagles dominated another football team like they did on Sunday. Now, granted, it's the Atlanta Falcons, a team that are definitely on the downturn. There were a lot of mistakes made on both sides of the ball, penalties galore, but the Eagles took advantage of it, and Jalen Hurts looked really, really good. I think, everyone talks about Lamar Jackson, but I think Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts, the game he put together, that's what Lamar Jackson needs to do every week. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the Miles Sanders in the backfield that Jalen Hurts does. And that's one of the big things. Miles Sanders is very quietly turning himself into a top 10 running back. He's a guy the Eagles can rely on. And, oh, by the way, Devontae Smith, it might be for the first time in 3 years, Howie Roseman picked the right wide receiver. And of course, once again, I have to kind of back myself up. It's only 1 week, but Devontae Smith looked really good. Jalen Reagor looked really good. There was some frustration from me early on with that screen passing game that had to get rolling. But of course, it paid dividends towards the end. It's not always going to be perfect. You're going to probably lose some yardage on those. But later in the game, it sets people up, whether it's faking that way and going deep, something like that. In this situation, the Eagles, 4-point home dogs. That is, to me, a little disingenuous. Now, I know the Niners are a step up on both sides of the ball from Atlanta, but I really do like what I saw out of Philadelphia. Out of myself, the only time I ever bet the Eagles is when I bet against them. I call it the emotional hedge. So, if the Eagles do lose, at least I make some money off of it. So I can't really bet the Eagles like I really want to, because I don't want to have a double loss on Sunday. But I would say the +4 for the Eagles is something I would be a big fan of if I was a neutral. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? San Francisco heading to Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that they're going in. As you said, they're the better team on paper. I get it. But after what Philadelphia put together last week, to have them open up at home -4, that just seems like a bit much to me. -4 is what we have on our spreadsheet here. I'd go another half and take Philadelphia +4.5 all day long on that one. I think they are probably going to be the surprise team that I didn't think was going to be a surprise team. I mean, I just thought they'd be Philadelphia. But, I think they're going to put together back-to-back. Maybe not go over 50 in this one. I would check the over-under closer to game time, but I'd go 4.5 and take the Eagles for sure.
Yeah, and the way betting logic is, or the lines are made, you always say it's 3 points just for being the home
team. For being the home team.
So, they're saying right now, if this was at a neutral site, the San Francisco 49ers would be 7-point favorites, which just, that's too much. Right. And we're not talking about a Jacksonville home field. We're not talking about an LA home field. We're talking about a Philadelphia home field that, even if the Eagles went out and struggled last week, would still be pretty rabid after not being able to be at full capacity last year. This is a fan base. Like I said, there are some Eagle forms. I mean, I joked about it with Raider Jim. I'm not ready to buy my Super Bowl tickets, but there are people in Philadelphia that are literally expecting to buy Super Bowl tickets after 1 week. So you can only imagine those people in that stadium on Sunday. It's going to be raucous. And I think that's definitely going to play into it. Now it's a double-edged sword, because if the Eagles get down 14-17, nothing, guess what happens then? Boo Birds. They go from Go Birds to Boo Birds. So that's kind of, like I said, a double-edged sword. Nothing changes faster than a Philadelphia fan. So you have to be at least somewhat mindful of that. But after what we saw last week, I don't think at least see that happening. They might not win this game, but I don't think they're going to get blown out by San Francisco. But moving on to some other games. This is another bit of a mismatch, but it's Houston heading to Cleveland. Cleveland is 12.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 48. Since 2006, Houston is 6-0 against the spread versus Cleveland. And Tyrod Taylor, since leaving Buffalo in 2018, he's 5-0 against the spread. So this is a guy that might not win football games, but he's going to cover the spread. And look, you had Trevor Lawrence, who's that hot shot, coming in, and Urban Meyer, the hot shot coach. And here's Tyrod and his crew, just kind of very average. Go out, look, let's not turn the ball over. Let's not do anything crazy and just work our way down the field. And next thing you know, they're 1-0. And at this point, the first place Houston Texans, all by them lonesome. But Raider Jim, I'll let you have the honors to start this one off. Cleveland, 12.5-point favorites.
Yeah, a big spread, and I get it. It's Cleveland. Cleveland did get banged up a little bit. They've already said Odell Beckham Jr. will not be playing this weekend. They're trying to ease him back into this after his surgery and all, but it's his knee is the reason he's not going to be playing this week. Still, they've got plenty of weapons. It's still Baker Mayfield. They did cover against the Chiefs on Sunday. It was not a bad game, and it was the Kansas City Chiefs. Houston surprised the heck out of me. I was kind of snickering because, well, what are they going to do? And then they bring in Tyrod Taylor, and it's like, really, this guy's only started X amount of games in his entire career. And then, they stick a needle in his lung last year and he's out for the whole season. It's like, oh my gosh, this poor guy can't catch a break. But he kind of went back to the old Buffalo form and showed why he should be a starter and why he should be playing week in and week out. So I won't be surprised if Houston covers the 12.5. I'm not going to bet it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they covered it. Do they win the game? No, they're not going to beat Cleveland at home. The over under 48, after what I saw last week, yeah, I think we go over for sure in this game.
Agreed. I was Cleveland kind of, they had, and it is Mahomes, I understand that, but they looked really good, and then almost in a blink of an eye, they couldn't stop a nosebleed. And at some point, once again, I agree with you. I'm not betting the spread here because I could very easily see Houston covering. But 12.5, that's a huge, huge number. I would say the over 48 here, two less than stellar defenses, and the offenses that, look, Tyrod, he's not going to, at the very least, I think he's going to at least somewhat keep you in the game. He's kind of, and he's not quote unquote game manager, but he has that bit of an X factor where he can get rolling too. He can run the ball. I don't think you're going to run too many read options with him, but if it's not working downfield and you don't have a spy on him, he's going to pick up a first down or two with his legs. So it's going to be interesting here. I'm with you. Over 48. Cleveland's defense, I know they got Myles Garrett. I know they got a couple other guys, but it's not putting it together for whatever reason. A lot of frustration I think you have to have if you're Cleveland, because I think the defense really let them down last week in a very winnable game against Kansas City. Mm-hmm. So moving on to another situation, to AFC North versus NFC North. This is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals at the Chicago Bears. The Bears are 3-point favorites. The over-under is 45. Just some betting notes. Chicago, in their last 3 games as home favorites, they're 0-3. And overall, and as overall favorites, they are 2-8 against the spread in their last 10. For Cincinnati, in their last 16 games straight up, they are 1-14-1. However, they are 8-8 against the spread, so they're cover kings, if you will. And then one last thing, Andy Dalton, since 2018, has been a favorite only 4 times. He is 0-4 as a favorite against the spread in those 4 games. So it is Cincinnati, Chicago favored by 3. I'll start this one off myself. I'm a big fan right now of Cincinnati +3. I know, there were a lot of question marks about Joe Burrow, his health, and Jamar Chase's ability to catch footballs. Well, guess what? It looks like everything, at least after week 1, everything looks good. There's plenty of chemistry between Burrow, Chase, and others. I really like this here for Chicago. They have the internal strife of all internal strifes going on right now, because I think everyone in the league is just kind of looking at them like, just start Justin Fields. We know you want to. Your entire fan base wants you to. It makes the most sense. Just do it already. Now, it will be kind of nice. It won't be in Cincinnati, but Andy Dalton, of course, made most of his hay in Cincinnati, really turned that franchise around. I will give him credit. He turned Cincinnati into at least a team that was a perennial playoff contender. Before him, Carson Palmer kind of did, but Dalton did it year in and year out. He's past his prime now. I think it's time to let Fields go, but as long as they're not going to do that, I think we should take advantage of that. I am all over Cincinnati +3. Maybe even send a DM to the Pope of the money line and see if Craig Mizrak would bless my Cincinnati money line, but we'll check on that later in the week. But anyways, I really like Cincinnati +3. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. I think what I saw from the Bears against the Rams are good. Rams are a very good team, but they just took care of business against the Bears. And what I'm hearing is Khalil Mack wasn't on any injury reports or questionable reports this week. He was questionable week 1. But what I've heard, or what I have dug around and found, is that apparently he still has a bit of a sore quad. Now, he played, but that is Khalil Mack not 100% is not a good thing for the Chicago Bears. And especially when you got a kid back there that can pass the ball, and they've got a pretty decent attack, a balanced attack. So I do like Cincinnati. I like the 3 all day long. We'll take them the +3. And over/under is going to be interesting. That's a tough call, because I can see this being one of those 24-17 games, 24-20, and there you are, hung out to dry with that 1 point that didn't get across the board. So I might not even touch the over/under on this and just stick with Cincinnati +3.
Yeah, and that 45 number is always tough, especially in a city like Chicago, where there's going to be a chance that the wind will play a factor every day of the week. And when you're talking about a 45 over/under, a missed extra point or 2 could be the difference in that. Like you said, 24-21, that's a push. 24-20, that's a loss. So keep an eye there on that. But once again, the spread, I think we're both in agreement there. Cincinnati +3 all day. So moving on into the the AFC East, it's Buffalo at Miami. Buffalo is 3.5-point favorites. The over/under here is 48. Miami is 16-5 against the spread as a dog in their last 21 games, including 5 straight covers. Tua as a underdog is 4-0 against the spread. So just some numbers there to think about. But Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors. Buffalo at Miami.
Miami did what they needed to do week 1. Miami's going to be at home this week. The weather's going to be not that great, but not that bad. And again, here we have that thing. Miami's home opener, and they're the 3.5-point underdog. So as we said with the other game, so what you're telling me is you think that Buffalo is 6.5 points better than this team. And if I'm not mistaken, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, their history of these 2 teams over the past few seasons, Miami has the upper hand in this matchup.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the case on Sunday. I think that they end up finishing the game strong. They play a strong game all the way around, and they start the season 2-0. So I will take Miami. I go just for the fun of it. I'd get another half point and take Miami +4, but I think it will go over 48 also. It's going to be a decent game.
Yeah, I'm all over the over 48. I already have that bet in. I think we're going to see some points being scored. Obviously, can Tua stay on the field? There's, always kind of those questions. But for Buffalo, this is a team that, man, it's been a long time since I've seen a team in as much control of the first half and then go into the second half and just, it seemed like an entirely different defensive side of the ball, the second half against Pittsburgh. And look, Tua brings a different dimension, but I definitely don't think Ben Roethlisberger is head and shoulders above Tua. It might just be a different way to get there, but Tua is going to bring your own struggles there. So I definitely like the over here. And I agree with you. Anytime you kind of see a home underdog at home, or home underdog opener, that's one you really got to feel good about. I'm in agreement with you there. Miami +4, even +3.5. I think even, field goal might be the biggest way that Buffalo can get this W. But moving on to the Los Angeles Rams at the Indianapolis Colts. The Rams are 4-point favorites. The over-under here is 47.5. I don't really have any betting notes here. But obviously the situation for the Rams, we saw them Sunday Night Football. Stafford looks comfortable. Even so comfortable that begrudgingly, I hate to bring it up, but I did think it was really cool. His best friend is Clayton Kershaw, and he was there to see Clayton Kershaw return from the DL, of course, lives in Los Angeles now. So very comfortable for Matt Stafford, really fitting in. I'd say it's pretty difficult to go from Detroit to LA, even in this situation, especially for a Texas boy. So he's fitting in, and that defense is very, very tough to deal with. Obviously, Indianapolis, Carson Wentz had his struggles. They had a tough matchup. Seattle's a very, very good team. However, Indianapolis, they're always going to want to win every single one of their home games, because that's how you have to win that division, to be honest. If you're going to, even with Tennessee kind of scuffling early on. The Rams here, -4. This is another home dog situation that personally I'm staying away from, but I am going to go under 47.5. I think both of these defenses are good enough to kind of turn this into a 20-17, 21 or a 23-20 situation. I could be wrong, because look, Matt Stafford could really start to open things up, and Wentz could somewhat have that opportunity as well if it does turn into a shootout. But I definitely feel the most comfortable playing the under 47.5 here, until I really kind of get a feel fully on what the Colts are going to do, because I could see it either way, that it could be an overreaction to say the Colts aren't going to be very good, while maybe the Seahawks are much better than what we thought. But anyways, Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the Rams at the Colts?
Yeah, I think the Rams are probably one of the most complete teams out there this year. And I do like them on the road, even, -4. Yeah. Do they win by 6? Probably by a whole touchdown. I think they're going to be able to stifle Indianapolis. And because of that, I will take the Rams -4. And I'm with you. I like the under in this one as opposed to an over.
Yeah, and that's the biggest part, when you go through there's so many, oh, that's an over, that's an over, that's an over. You have to kind of stop yourself and go, no. There's going to be a large amount of these that go under, and you have to kind of find those. And I think this is definitely one of them. Another one that's got a low number, but also could be an under. It's the other NFC or AFC East matchup. The New England Patriots at the New York Jets. The Patriots are 6-point favorites. The over-under here is 42.5. Interesting numbers here from the betting side of things. New England straight up against the Jets since 2011. They are 16-2 straight up. However, against the spread, they're 7-11, and their last 6 games as a favorite, New England has only covered once. Obviously a little different without Brady, but it is the Jets situation here. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to start us off. New England at the Jets.
Yeah, the chip on the shoulder factor is what I'm playing with in my head here. I mean, New England to lose the way they did last week, Belichick is not a happy man, and he doesn't care who the next team is. Somebody's going to pay for it, and it might as well be, you might as well be the bully on the schoolyard and pick on the weakest kid in the neighborhood, and that's what this could very well be. Yeah, I have a feeling that New England will cover the 6 on this one. But 42.5, that's interesting. I'm with you. This could very well end up being 21-17, that type of a game. And there it is, 21-17. It could be 24-17, and that's a whole different ball game then. But yeah, I take New England with the -6 on this one. I'm going to go ahead and go over 42.5 on this one, though. I think somehow somebody's going to get an extra field goal at the end of the game just to screw up the point spread, or the over-under, I should say.
Well, and that's another thing too. Some of these over-unders, late, Zach Wilson's they got to go down the field. 4 minutes left. They're down by 10 points. Boom, he's going to throw a pick 6. And you know what? The coaching staff of the Jets, they're going to be like, hey, look that guy off next time. But at the end of the day, they want you to make that throw because you have to kind of go out for it. Well, guess what? That puts it over the over there. So got to be a little careful there. As I always tell people, NFL coaches do not care about the over under, and they care even less about the spread, and they care even less about your fantasy team. So, and Bill Belichick is the biggest one of all. I still believe he would specifically bring in like backup fullbacks after 99-yard run from a running back, just to spite the fantasy owners for, some of those guys. And I don't know if he would do that, but definitely would be right on par for what we know for Bill Belichick. But anyways, final 3 games here. We'll start Minnesota at Arizona. Arizona is a 4.5-point favorite. The over-under here is 51. Minnesota is 6-11 against the spread since last year. That is tied for the worst in the NFL. And in the last 9 Minnesota games, 8 of them have gone over that follow a loss. Obviously, that's a situation here. It's a perfect segue because I really do like the over 51 here. I think that's way too low of a number. Look, Kirk Cousins has his struggles. There's no doubt about it. But Dalvin Cook, I believe, is still that game changer in both facets of the game, running the ball and catching the ball. Obviously, is it Anthony Madison or Madison? There is a great change of pace back as well. And you still have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, plenty of weapons on the Minnesota side. And look, Kyler Murray he's a cheat code out there. Now, he's not going to be always make maybe the smartest move or anything like that, but he's going to be running around for dear life, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And more often than not, he's going to make something happen. So I do like the over 51 here. Now, the spread at 4.5, that's a tough one because essentially you're asking yourself, is Arizona going to win this game by a touchdown or not? And that's a tough answer for me to have. But at the same time, I also don't like to ever put money on Kirk Cousins, especially on the road. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Arizona at Minnesota. I'm sorry, I have that backwards. Minnesota at Arizona.
Yeah, I think Minnesota might have showed their true colors in week 1. I know it was only week 1, but oh my gosh, that was abysmal, I thought. Do they win this game? Nope. Do they lose this game? Yep. Will they score points? Sure, they'll be allowed to score some points. I do think Arizona will cover, and I do like the over in this one.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to kind of sum it up. The Minnesota, they're probably not going to be very good. They're probably not going to win a ton of games this year, especially on the road. And this is definitely one that I don't think that is attainable for them. A very interesting matchup. I believe this is Sunday Night Football. It's Tennessee at Seattle. Tennessee, obviously, a very rough week 1. Seattle is 5.5-point favorites at home. The over-under is 54. One betting note I have here, Tennessee's last 12 games, 10 of them have gone over. It's kind of what we've seen from them over the last few years. But Raider Jim, why don't you give us your thoughts on Tennessee heading to Seattle?
Titans are banged up. Titans had a miserable week 1. And maybe I have the chip on my shoulder and I'm just mad that they blew my picks. But what I saw from them and what I saw from Seattle, Seattle's going to be at home. I think this is Seattle's game all the way around. 5.5. I don't know that that's too much. I can just see them, winning by the 6, winning by 7. Over 54, I think it's going to be a great offensive game.
Yeah, I really also like Seattle to cover here, and that's kind of a big number for me, especially this weekend, this early. And I think it's just a perfect storm. There are very few fan bases, whether they've been around for a while or not, but they can change the game in that stadium. They didn't have it all last year. They're going to be ready to roll. And it's Sunday Night Football. It's going to be the atmosphere is going to be there, no doubt about it. It might not be Sunday Night Football. I'm not sure what it is, so I got to stop saying that. But anyways, I do like Seattle to get the job done here. And I think a big reason why is what I talked about in the offseason is trading for Julio Jones, trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. This is not a team that's going to stretch the ball or stretch the game out. And if they do, then I think it's at a detriment to Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is not a drop back passer that's going to go out and get it done. I think we saw that week 1. Do they make adjustments? We shall find out. Now, for me, one of my fantasy teams, I have AJ Brown and Julio Jones. So, I don't know if that was the greatest idea by me, but it's very dependent on that. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't think this weekend's going to be that time. But the final game, it is Monday Night Football, Detroit at Green Bay. Green Bay is -11, and the over-under here is 48. Since 2009, Green Bay is 6-0 against the spread following a straight-up loss, and that's what last week was, a straight-up loss. But anyways, I will get this one started. This is kind of crazy. I'm not usually a huge fan of double-digit numbers, especially early in the season. However, I really do like Green Bay here. I'll just cover myself, get myself down to 10.5. So a 31-21 or a 31-20 final doesn't get me, but I really like Green Bay here. As bad as Aaron Rodgers looked, I think he's going to at least be able to go, okay, look, we got Detroit coming up. Tom Brady used to do this to the Bills, or maybe it was the Jets. He's like 18-1 against that team. The Rodgers is the same way against the Lions. The only difference here is it's not on Thanksgiving. Thank goodness. So we'll see it Monday night, but I think this is going to be an absolute blowout for Green Bay in Lambeau. Give me the 10.5 for Green Bay. I'm not worried about that. The over under, once again, I'm worried. Can Detroit score some points? They obviously got some late scores, that 40, or I think 2 late touchdowns that made it way closer than it should have been against the Niners. But yeah, I really do like Green Bay to cover the 11, or at least in this case, 10.5. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more with what you've said as far as the spread, I should say. On the over under, 35-14. There it is, 49 points. I think it's going to happen. So just take Green Bay, and Green Bay at home cannot play a bad 2 weeks in a row for one thing, but they can't play like they did at home for the opener. It's just not going to happen. It's just not feasible. And if I may back up to the previous game, that Tennessee game at Seattle, the other thing that was very interesting to me is, you mentioned Julio Jones, but it was Derrick Henry that stood out for me. Derrick Henry only got 58 yards last week, and that was a real head scratcher. I really thought that he was going to go out there and just, have a great 100+ yard game. That is the least amount of yards I think I've seen him pick up in I don't know how long. So if they can stifle him on Sunday, that could mess with the over, or with the over under. But just a comment on the whole Derrick Henry situation, because you're right. You would think that, we got Julio Jones, we better isolate on him. That might make it easier for Henry, or vice versa. Didn't work out that way for Tennessee. Going back to Green Bay, though, I think Aaron's going to have his head straight, and everything's going to be fine. He'll be back on track. 17 weeks long. Week 1, the Raiders aren't going to the Super Bowl yet, neither the Eagles, and Green Bay's not out of the playoff picture.
No, yeah. And as I said, kind of as I'll start my final thoughts off with kind of what I began with, that look, week 1 in all of the sports world, it's the biggest overreaction you can have. It's one of now 17, but it used to be one of 16 chapters, those things like that. Nobody was eliminated. Nobody clinched. There are plenty of answers to questions definitely down the road. Even if you're a Falcon fan, you can't feel great, but at the end of the day, you could look back and go, hey, remember when we, put up only 6 points, and who knows, things change. Now, conversely, you could be an Eagles fan and go, wow, we went 1-16. It was all downhill from that week. Now, I don't think that'll happen, but it could. Once again, this is the biggest overreaction you can have in all of sports. So just kind of temper those expectations. But at the very least, make a little bit of money off of some of those situations, because there's plenty of value here. I think there's a lot of overreaction from Vegas's side as well. But Raider Jim, final thoughts as we wrap up the week 2 preview.
Yeah, that was a good way to summarize it. I've told friends of mine the hardest weeks to pick are week 1 and weekend, the last one. Last week, first week, they're the hardest 2 weeks that you're going to have to pick. Now you have an idea of what teams are going to go out, what they're capable of. Week 2, we'll see how closely did we pay attention, and how right are our instincts at this point. And then again, with each passing week, we should have a better overview of each team and each matchup. And we will be here every Wednesday to let you know what our thoughts are.
Amen. We'll be here to break it all down, give you our opinions. And as always, make sure you follow us, because what we record Wednesday, it usually drops Thursday or Friday. A lot of things happen between then, whether it's injuries or line movements. So make sure you follow both of us. Of course, Raider Jim at Raider Jim 1090, and myself at Ferst Report, and the podcast network at Off the Bench 1-2. But with that, it is time for us to bid you all adieu. Thank you all so much for listening to the NFL Weekly, the week 2 preview presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.